So I'll ask you this question. Why are the New York Times, Axios Media, the Detroit Free Press, I'm running USA Today, and the state of Pennsylvania now all telling us that we will not have a presidential winner on election night? I'll answer this one for you. They are conditioning us to get ready for a post-election turmoil in the United States, dare I say a civil war. Just so you understand, the media did this to us in 2020. They laid the groundwork for this election, for the 2020 election as well, telling us not to expect a winner on that evening. I mean, it was stunning. Hold strong. Hold strong. Don't worry about it. Your boy Biden will eventually come out on top. This was the New York Times in 2020. How the media could get the election story wrong. We may not know the results for days, maybe weeks, the New York Times warned us. So it's time to rethink election night. This was back in 2020. Here is The Guardian in 2020, warning us then, will the U.S. media call the right winner on election night? Don't count on it. We can't rely on the media to call the election fairly. Here's what we need to know about it. And in fact, we all went to bed that night. America, the United States of America, went to bed that night. The polls closed. Right? This is bedtime. Polls closed. Americans going to bed. See that there? Closed. Polls are closed. Polls are closed. Reporting in 59% of precincts, 64% of precincts, 83% of precincts, 94% of precincts reporting. Polls closed across America. Look at those numbers. 54% Michigan, Pennsylvania, 57 to 41%. Georgia, 53 to 46%, 54 to 44%, 51. I mean, those numbers are pretty staggering. So America goes to bed, and surprise, 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 like my favorite Instagram meme. Yes. Surprise, surprise.
Wasn't it?
It was. The clock struck midnight. Donald Trump was leading in all of those battleground states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then, well, something happened. What happened? Well, as LifeSite News explained in a great analysis piece, overnight on election night, the numbers flipped. Of course, Joe Biden, a candidate who struggled to attract even, modest crowds at that point to his rallies, somehow garnered the most votes in American history. Look at how the liberal USA Today even showed Biden rallies. Notice the date on this, right before Election Day. Look at that. Scenes from Joe Biden's 2020 campaign rallies. That's the photo they chose to lead it off.
Okay.
Here's another Biden rally. Look at this. Look at all these excited people at a Biden rally. One guy so excited he's a reporter sitting there on a computer. There's like 5 people who are not related to Biden. Look at the Secret Service agents, and then Jill Biden, and then like 4 people.
That guy's probably a reporter.
And then another guy with a laptop is another reporter. Anyway, and then it's amazing. It really is amazing. On election night, Joe Biden received 81 million votes, a staggering 15 million more votes than Hillary Clinton did just 4 years earlier, more than President Obama. Again, more votes than any American president in history. He is a hero. I mean, he's my hero. 81 million votes. How do you pull that off? It is amazing. You can see the excitement in these voters' faces right behind all these COVID masks. You can see their excitement. So now the media are doing it again. Now it's called preconditioning. Just so you understand preconditioning, it's the same way that President Obama's production company produced and released a movie last year called Civil War. That's called preconditioning. Yes, Obama's production company behind this Ethan Hawke film. And what's her name? Jessica. I'm
pretty sure that's Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts.
You're the worst at this.
Oh, my God. I forgot.
Jessica, I'm sure, is her cousin, I think.
Jessica Roberts. Yeah.
I just made that up.
Jessica Rabbit. So that's preconditioning. Don't take my word for it, though. Listen to what the New York Times just published this week on what to expect on election night. This is New York Times this week. Harris or Trump, once again, election results could take a while. More Americans are using mail-in ballots, which takes longer to count than those cast in person. In several battleground states, a winner may not be apparent on November 5th. Of course. Quote, there will be no clear and immediate winner on election night, says the New York Times, and that early returns could give a false impression of who will ultimately prevail.
You know where this sounds so familiar? I'm thinking Germany, Pakistan. In recent history. This has been happening where the people's candidate, they go to bed and that candidate is winning, and then overnight something happens. It's just, this sequel sucks. I've heard this one before. I've read this one before. This is being well played.
Yeah, you've seen this movie before. Someone in the chat on a Rumble says that the Civil War movie, I didn't see it, so I'm not going to watch that movie. I'm not giving any money to the Obama production company from watching that movie, but someone said that movie, Civil War movie, was just a lame movie about Trump derangement syndrome. So there will be no clear and immediate winner, the New York Times says. Well, they're not the only ones. Time Magazine. Why we might not know the winner on election night. So Time Magazine also getting in on the liberal action here. Remember, you have to remember the New York Times, Time Magazine, CBS News. They're frankly mouthpieces of the deep state, CIA. As we've had an FBI whistleblower here on the show explain to us that if they ever want to leak information, fake stories, plant stories into the media, they first go to the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time Magazine also on that list. They just funnel these stories to these liberal magazines and liberal newspapers and get this message out there. That's what they do. So these are just this is all part of an agenda. Time Magazine, why we might not know the winner on election night. Axios, 2020 deja vu all over again. Why the 2024 election, it could take days to call, Axios says. Here's what Axios says more deeply. It's a near guarantee that Donald Trump will declare victory the night of November 5th, and the margin won't matter, Axios says. It won't matter whether he's accurate and he's actually won or whether he was defeated soundly. Quote, I think we should absolutely expect the super spreaders of disinformation will parrot the lies about the election in the immediate aftermath. That's what Axios says. And not to be outdone, the state of Pennsylvania, a battleground state, my home state, the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. I would argue it's more important than any other swing state, not just because it's my home state, but this election cycle, Pennsylvania, will determine who wins this presidential race this year. Not Florida, not Ohio, but all eyes on Pennsylvania because of those 19 electoral votes. If President Trump carries that, then those other states and their fewer electoral votes really don't matter from a swing state perspective. All eyes on Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania publishing this, letting us know Pennsylvania won't always know the final results of all races on election night. Any changes in results that occur as counties continue to count ballots are not evidence that an election is rigged. So Pennsylvania wants to get out in front in this and let you know that Pennsylvania might be too close to call. Probably not on election night. You won't know who won Pennsylvania.
I feel like they should have put the word not necessarily evidence. If they're saying we know already that the election is not rigged and the election has not happened, that's a preordained conclusion that makes me a little nervous. So they're saying we already know, full stop, election's not rigged. Well, it hasn't happened yet. Right. So let's leave open a possibility of a corruption, given we have a lot of corruption.
What brains in our Rumble chat says, source, trust us.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Right.
So they know into the future the election's not rigged. I don't think anybody can say that with full certainty. Nobody can see the future. Pennsylvania can. Okay. They're warning us all, and you should listen to your liberal media. You should listen to our liberal media. You should listen to all of the liberal media sources like the Detroit Free Press up there in Michigan, also getting in on the bandwagon today. Delay in reporting election results in Detroit, Wayne, and Macomb counties raises concerns. So they are warning us in Michigan that we're going to see delays. So I guess if the deep state keeps trying to kill Trump and can't succeed, they'll have to figure out another way. And that's why they're getting us ready for this election turmoil. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson just wrote this morning and asks, why are the deep state liberals trying to kill Trump? Here's what Tucker writes. Any political candidate's might can be measured by their opponent's fear of losing to them. First of all, that's a beautiful sentence. Just look at that sentence for a second. Any political candidate's might can be measured by their opponent's fear of losing to them. If the other side thinks you're going to win, then your campaign is going pretty well. Based on the past 2.5 months, it's clear that Donald Trump's opponents know he's going to win. Why else would they have tried to kill him twice?
America hasn't seen anything like this in decades, and even though political violence has become bizarrely common, it's worth taking a step back to acknowledge just how sick the people perpetrating it are. There's nothing less democratic than killing off the race's front runner, but they keep trying to do it anyway. And they keep calling Trump a threat to democracy. Peter Doocy asked Karine Jean-Pierre that very question at the White House press briefing. Basically, why are you guys trying to get Trump killed by calling him a threat? Because there are crazy people out there that are listening to you right now. Here was her response.
2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat.
President Biden has been clear-eyed about the threat that the former president represents to our democracy.
How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident, and now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement, and it is that is also incredibly dangerous.
So Peter Doocy is dangerous. Mm-hmm. So she a moment ago calls President Trump a threat to democracy.
Right. And he's saying these are dangerous words. And she said, no, I'm not you.
Well, I don't call him a threat. You just said that President Biden labels him a threat to democracy. At what point are you going to stop using that language that he's a threat to? He was president for 4 years. What threat was there to our democracy? I don't know if you've looked at the country right now, if you've stared at it in the face, but it's been a disaster. So what threat exactly? Could she clarify? But Peter Doocy is the threat to democracy. He's dangerous. And the threats keep on coming. Overnight, we learned that more than 20 Trump supporters at a rally in Tucson who were predetermined to be in this roped-off area to shake Trump's hand suddenly came down with a chemical burn. Chemical burns to their eyes. They had to be rushed to the emergency room. What in the world is going on? This was at this Tucson rally just a few days ago. Watch.
More than 2,000 people filled up the Tucson Music Hall Thursday to hear Donald Trump's first speech in Tucson this campaign as Election Day nears. Some of his biggest supporters were allowed to sit behind him on stage, supporters like Mayra Rodriguez, a former director of Planned Parenthood with a notable shift to being pro-life. In 2016, she sat behind presidential candidate Hillary Clinton on stage at an event. Now she supports Donald Trump. She enjoyed the rally, but once she left, everything changed.
As soon as we left and I stepped outside, I started feeling like my eyes were burning.
At first, she thought it might be allergies. She lives near Phoenix. By the time she got home, it was so bad she decided to go to the emergency room.
The emergency room staff keeps saying, from the triage nurse to the PA, and are you sure you're not going to spray anything? Your symptoms look like you were spraying something.
The News 4 Tucson investigators spoke to her the morning after the rally, Friday last week. That morning, she was nearly blind.
I can't see anything. When I try to open my eyes, it's like a white cloud covered. It hurts. It hurts a lot to open my eyes. I have this cold cloth that I put on and I take off all the time. But this is horrible.
She says the doctors weren't able to determine what exactly caused it. Her initial thought of allergies went out the window when she heard from several others seated next to her at the rally that also ended up seeking medical attention with the same symptoms.
Yeah. Nothing to see here. Just move on. Someone in our chat just said, nothing to see here. Just move on. So you have an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania that kills a Trump supporter, right? Yeah, collateral damage to them. You have another attempt in Florida. You have this in Tucson almost simultaneously, or a few days actually prior to what happened in Florida. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. Sources I've spoken with today tell me that someone dusted this area with a chemical agent, and that if they take environmental samples and compare it to the blood work of the victims, they should be able to isolate it and figure out what it was. Someone in the chat is asking, what do you think it was? What kind of chemical? Was it a chlorine gas attack? This is maybe a possibility, because that chlorine could carry out similar symptoms like this, but we don't know until someone isolates it and figures it out. So there are 47 days left. How many more times will they try to kill Trump? I mean, it seems like they're going for broke at this point.
Yeah.